Hello guys, and welcome back to Strategic Command World War II, World at War with our Allied playthrough. In the last episode, we took on the Soviet Union after ending the turn and moving into January 29th, 1943. We've done pretty much everything with them. We do still have money to spend, 666 MPPs right next to America's 777. That's quite funny and convenient, but we'll deal with that later when we have a better overall picture of what to expect. Right now, what I want to deal with is the Brits, and a simple place to look at for the Brits is probably going to be down here in Greece. Oh look, for once the Desert Air Force fighters don't say that they're low on supply. Wow, it's because they're in a town, probably. But they're still undersupplied. It's like, as compared to the supply provided by a nearby HQ, if I had to guess, but I don't know that for a fact. We do have mobility on the Sudanese HQ and the Sudan Defense Force Corps, and we have received the first Corps of Sudan, which thankfully I can go deploy by Port Sudan and get that in a transport ASAP so it can link up with its HQ. Now that we know that the minor HQs don't provide supply for any friendly majors, it can at least be used to take some pressure off the front, theoretically. However, the front is still here, it is still raging. We have an enemy fighter group just chilling here, right next to the WDF army. Capable of being one shot. Looks like we did end up losing that mine. They must have moved someone around, like just past it, because there's nobody on it. But that's fine. I moved back to get into supply anyway. And the capital, Bulgaria, is surrounded. To continue a conversation from the last episode, when I was talking about what the winter might potentially do to units, I still haven't found anything in the manual about the winter affecting supply, despite it looking very clear to me that it does. However, I did find that when you're in snow and stuff, it actually affects your attack values and lowers them by exactly 50%. So every attack we do in snow is just that nerfed, and vice versa, which makes it really, really hard to attack during the winter, that's for sure. However, I'll go ahead and take advantage of this fucking plane just sitting here, dealing 8 damage, and what do you know, wiping it out. I could continue to move the WDF army forward, lacking some attacks. However, seems like a smart idea to me to move that forward. Securing the town of Split, another Yugoslavian town under our control. Belgrade having panzers nearby is going to make it a pretty tough nut to crack. Looking at how the Greeks are doing over by Bulgaria, the Macedonian army is the only one here, the rest being corps, that can actually do any guaranteed damage to the Bulgarians on Sofia right now. So I've gone ahead and attacked. Looks like we dealt about 3 damage. Unfortunately, the corps still don't stand a very good chance at doing quite anything. Supply in these mountains is unfortunately low when it comes to wanting to move any others, yet of course the roads certainly look better. We'll take the Epirus army, which does not have enough supply to reinforce where it is, and use its mobility to get that up around the Bulgarian army here. Something that is helping it is the amount of entrenchment it has, 2 out of 3, and the fact that of course we are in snowy conditions. That can certainly have effect, not to mention 4% morale on the 3rd Corps. 1 supply, you know, this stuff is pretty brutal. The Germans on the other side here, dealing with the Soviets, are way better supplied than we are, and it would be hard to get a number of attacks in right now without risking maybe a little bit too much. Due to the snow and our advance and our lack of overall units and lives to throw away like the Soviets have, I'm going to be a little more cautious with my advance here. So I'm going to take the 7th Armored Tanks. I'm actually going to move them around to fill in this gap by Split. The Desert Field Artillery will move up into the mountains here to protect all these units here and provide defensive fire just outside of Belgrade if need be. The 2nd Corps here can't get very far. There's still the Germans in this part of Bulgaria to worry about, not just the push going forward. However, I will send the 2nd Corps up the center here, where supply is still decent. We will reinforce the Hellenic fighters up to max. We will take the Desert Air Force fighters, and we'll probably move these. I'm not sure. Well, no, they could stay there right now. This HQ is probably going to need to move. However, it can't really do with staying here. The supply isn't good enough anyway. Skopje has good enough supply, so we'll move this up to get closer to all of our Greek corps and armies up front, even though the Greeks can only sustain 4 units when they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least, something like that. The British tactical bombers are not in a good spot in Larissa. They're never in a good spot here. The supply has just been terrible for them, but we're going to go ahead and reinforce them to keep them from doing anything much at the moment. The Sudan Defense Force Corps realistically can be given the order to just move up through Albania, so we'll go ahead and do that. The HQ can't quite keep up as well. However, I'm not sure what the best place to move it to. I guess I'll just move it up through Albania and get it following directly to provide supply along the front for any of its Sudanese forces, which of course we will work on getting the First Corps from Sudan up as soon as possible. Once again, just trying to make the best of our HQ since we can't actually reinforce the Brits themselves, so Montgomery will have to support whatever he can, and hopefully we can replace most of the hitters on the front with colonial forces if we need to. Now we have this whole big mess in the Mediterranean as well to look at. By the way, we're going to leave this anti-tank here for now, just as something for the enemies to not want to run into if they do see this city being open. We can also give it some better AA defenses, so sure, alright, let's do that. I think everything else can't necessarily be upgraded, maybe except this core. This core will get the upgrade. It's, I'd rather have it reinforcing. However, I don't want to push up in these conditions right now. We need to wait for certain things to catch up, ideally. Now, the Germans... Oh my god, this is the Bismarck. This is not just any battleship. They sailed the Bismarck up and ran into a terrible situation with the Sheffield light cruiser, likely just trying to reach some of the ships they saw over here thanks to the Spanish. Well, sending our light cruisers in is not going to be the smartest way to handle this. The best thing we can do is use the carriers. So let's use the Glorious carrier, which has been injured due to the Italian human torpedoes, and bombard the Bismarck battleship. This is how it died in real life, to air. Now let's make it fear that in game. Bombing it twice, dealing at least, I believe, about 5 damage to it overall. I'm afraid to leave this here any further, to be honest, but I can't do a whole lot. One thing I will definitely do is we're going to sail the Cumberland and Kent heavy cruisers out in order to make more room over here. Now, I could also have this go into bomber mode. That's probably a good way to finish this off. Let's go ahead and bombard it further, dealing another 3 damage, but it's still up. And voila! It is dead. Big national morale bonus, but some damage to the aircraft, which is going to be unfortunate, as we don't have any ports around here really capable of repairing that. This is normal port, normal port, normal port. Yeah, everything around here is just normal ports. On our side, we need a major port to get anything above 8, which is not good, not good. Maybe they can stay here. I don't know if those human torpedoes will strike again, but ideally I don't want to keep them on the docks, because for right now, I don't consider those safe, because I don't know the extent of this event. So, we will end up moving forward. These battleships and things like that. Well, I guess the battleship doesn't need to move all the way up. We can move the battle cruisers up first, along with the Norfolk heavy cruiser. The, let's see, Nelson battleship is also here. We'll go ahead and move that along land as well, so we can move the Glorious carrier and the Courageous carrier out of dock to free up the spaces for any Indians that might be able to make it here, and just so that they don't take any damage from anything that might come over here. We do have the Formidable carrier, which could head south. We also have the Ark Royal carrier, which might be able to make it. Yeah, I can make it to Gibraltar. We'd want to free up more room on this left side, however, so tell you something I'll do is a little bit of a scouting maneuver here. Let's start by, we will take the Sheffield light cruiser, and we're going to send that all the way up to Plymouth. Like that, we have confirmed that the path is safe. Alright, very good. Let's move this carrier a bit further in. And we have an extra heavy cruiser over here. Let's move that over here to block this side off. In fact, if we could just swap these out, that would be fantastic. Cool. Now we have some battleships that I'm just going to move over to the other side for the time being. The Duke of York and, let's say, the Prince of Wales to keep that safer. We will take the Ark Royal carrier and send that down. Not to the dock itself, but down here, nonetheless. Everything, I believe, carrier-wise, well, not everything, being in intercept mode specifically, which I guess automatically turns off when I set someone to bomber. Well, no, they just don't have cap in bomber mode, so I guess that makes sense. The Formidable carrier will head down right next to it. The other 2 carriers having sustained some damage. Not sure if I want to get those repairing. Either way, it's not something I can do this turn. The Illustrious Carrier is also down here, however, it cannot make it that far. So the Illustrious Carrier does have its upgrades. I will send that down to Brest for the time being. It will be safe down in Brest unless the enemies start producing aircraft carriers or long-range, like, maritime bombers. Now, if you put your maritime bombers over here, I would not be able to do this. But they're using them to fight Soviets instead, like a bunch of fucking idiots. And so we still have our fleet maintaining over here. Pretty good, pretty nice. The aircraft carriers, having flown, would not be very good at dealing with enemy ships. However, we do know of an enemy heavy cruiser here, which we're going to try to sail up to in silent mode. And we see that it appears to be alone. So we'll go ahead and use the unupgraded Truant sub on it. What upgrade does this have? AA. Alright, good. Dealt 2 damage. Took no damage. We'll send up the DEI sub as well in silent mode. Doing another 2 damage. And receiving none. 4 damage to an Italian heavy cruiser. That's going to be expensive to pay for. Maybe luring out some of their ships momentarily that we can send our strike force of ships after as well. Now, the Indian 1st Heavy Artillery is close enough to make it to the ports of Gibraltar. Or to Cadiz. Let's send it over to Cadiz and drop it off over in Spain. We will move it up as far as it can get for right now. Madrid is only defended by the 1 corps. I kind of wish I had the corps going around and the special forces here, but for right now, the BAI army with its low supply is still enough to go ahead and attack, dealing 4 damage, taking none. Whoo! Which allows our corps here to actually accomplish something. Or not. Okay. Or not. We'll go ahead and secure Valencia in the time being with the special forces. And I guess just continue to move the special forces up along the coast, where they can maybe cut off the railway and roadway heading out of here. Continue to just take more and more stuff away from the Germans, because the Spanish are serving the Germans. Although one thing to remember is we don't want to go too crazy north, because there's 2 spots here that can spawn partisans and 2 places that can hurt infrastructure. The partisan spawning parts are the bad part. However, right now that's secure. That is as I want it. India has 152 MPPs. They've been severely neglecting their research because I've spent so much points on their units. They don't really have anything else to set out to sea, so I think I do want to get them going into some research. We could operate their planes out there, but as of right now, it's not necessary. Could be helpful, but not necessary. So I will go ahead and resume some research with them. Namely, we'll put 150, so almost all of it, into spying and intelligence, which the spying and intelligence is really, really handy, but it also just helps with research in general, with our Indy capacity being research, and the fact that at this rate the Indians are going to occupy Spain. That should actually be pretty helpful for providing them with more MPPs. And I do wonder, still, I know India can get some garrisons, hardly enough to keep their home defended. I'm not sure how to handle the partisans of Spain, because I haven't had to deal with partisans this entire game. If the Brits could pump out some garrisons and send them here, that would be great. And they can. Oh, they can make tons of garrisons that they don't need. Not to mention, all these African colonial ones can make garrisons as well. But that's pretty much what the Indians are going to accomplish with their push. Pretty good. It's not bad. The Madrid defenses, the entrenchments are going down. The corps is weakening. They'll probably just reinforce it anyway. We'll soon be able to force the Spanish heavy cruiser out, at least, which will be nice. I guess as further protection for the carriers, I'll move the battleship in front of the 2 carriers. I'll keep the Prince of Wales safe. Not just because it has an elite reinforcement and experience, but because it's the Prince of Wales, and the fact that it didn't die in Task Force Z is just so nice to me. Now, we see there's still German fighters over here in France, unfortunately. There's not a lot I can do. Not a lot of easy things I can do. We can give elite reinforcements to the attack bombers. Do we want to do that? Probably not. It is safe to say that this town and port are cut off, however, at Cherbourg. However, we might be able to just wipe that out without any bombers or anything, which would be ideal, because then we don't have to waste any time on these enemy fighters, which usually tear us to pieces. Let's take the BEF army and attack Cherbourg just up front. 3 damage dealt. None received. Okay, let's use the 1st Corps. And we have finished off the enemies at Cherbourg. And now I can take the BEF and go step on Cherbourg, securing the port as well as the town for us. Which I will... Can't easily step off of without maneuvering other things, which I might, because I want to move the Alexander HQ up there so I can get the Canadian HQ moving forward, because the Canadians have to support their own forces. For that, I'll have to start some new maneuver. The Group for Special Forces can get an attack off at the enemies at Kane. No effective damage dealt, unfortunately, but we will take them then, and we will move them, well, let's see, the road's over here. But I'd like to have a prepared attack, so let's go ahead and just move forward around Kane, closing in on Paris, which, wow, would be great if the Brits could secure Paris with the Canadians just by landing in Brest due to a French partisan. We'll take the First Corps, break its entrenchments to move it south, and we'll move the BEF army up forward to the front with Kane. The Alexander HQ will move up to Cherbourg so that the Canadian HQ can move up to St. Malo to support its troops. The Canadians mostly just going to hold their own defensive lines right now against Nantes while we reinforce the Second Corps sitting here that were previously attacked. Trying not to be too aggressive because, as you see, we have a lack of units here. The Indian tanks can be moved. Not all the way. We do have this port, but we're not going to be able to land there just because it's not at 5 supply yet. See, I got it memorized. I just had to make some mistakes. So we'll take the Indians and send them over to Tripoli with their tanks, where they will rest for the time being. The Special Forces, 77th, can make it to Malta, so we will send them to Malta. And there's also the paratroops, which we'll send over as well. Something I really regret when it comes to making so many Indian troops is the fact that this Indian HQ can control how many units? With full command and control, which I'm amazed that I have, 6. We already have 1, 2, 3, 4 here, 5, 6, 7 on the way. 8, actually. Wait, wasn't there more? Wasn't there something else? No, maybe 7. That's 1 too many for the HQ to control. I wish instead of putting so much that I had just gone into research instead and then even things out. I really also didn't pay attention enough to the importance of HQs. I knew they were important. I just, while giving them more importance in my head than I thought they needed, I still managed to underestimate their importance, which is very good that I've learned at least and can bring this information forward into future playthroughs like PvPs and such. The Brits do have the first mechanized that they can deploy over here somewhere in their land. We'll go put that down at, well, I guess, Portsmouth. That will be the final unit for the British Alexander HQ to take care of. And then from there on, we would probably either need another British HQ to fit anything else down here, or we would need more Canadian troops for the Creer HQ to use. And this HQ is good. This is not like a lot of the other minor HQs, which are terrible, like the Greek one, which is rating 4. The Plaid HQ, the Sudanese one, is actually pretty good. What about the South African one? Rating 6? Okay, not that bad. And I think that's with our command and control upgrades as well. It would have started off looking a hell of a lot worse, that's for sure. I will go ahead and give elite reinforcements to the TAC bombers, just so I don't have to expend too much on these units right now, while still making them stronger in some way. We don't want to necessarily go waste these MPPs at the moment. Looking at Canada, we do have 2 destroyers that still need some reinforcements. And we have enemy subs, at least 2 of them, just in this area alone. So we will send the Bulldog destroyer straight down, immediately running into an enemy contact. One of the subs, let's go ahead and try an ASW it, dealing 1 damage, taking 2. Again, our ASW has just been really shoddy all game. This is another one of those things that I knew we needed, but I underestimated how long it would take to research it. We do finally have ASW level 2, as you can see. However, we'd still have to hand it out. And right now, all of our destroyers are currently engaged in operations, I believe. Yeah, there's literally not one destroyer that can get an upgrade. There's the Canadian ones, but they're reinforcing. There's one Canadian one out here. The Montgomery is one that's going to need to get somewhere to replenish. And to be honest, I might just send him down to Canada. He could make it to the British Isles, not into a port. So I think I will go ahead and do that. I'm going to send the Montgomery down to Canada, where it will be able to get some replenishment. Good old allies working together. The Lancaster will move forward. Oh my god, they have 3 fucking subs in this area? Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? And I know they have another one somewhere down here. What the fuck? Alright. And this is their really good sub. Level 3 advanced subs. Our ASW is woefully behind. Let's go ahead and attack it. Dealing no damage, taking no damage. whatever that's worth. We'll take the Mohawk and just have it go up towards where we think the other one is. Discovering it. This one's not as upgraded. Submarine dives from attack, taking no damage. That is unfortunate. We'll send the Amazon destroyer up north, while leaving this destroyer down here, I guess. We don't need to leave it all the way down here. We can go ahead and kind of like align it a little bit with the Mediterranean, so the pacing is just a little bit closer. You know, if the war was not going so rapidly, I wouldn't need to invest as much into like land forces as I've been doing, and I could have invested a lot more into navy and things like that, destroyers. And the MPPs could be getting spent in much different locations than they are getting spent, which is definitely worth noting. Now, we still have the Anapolis, which is going to come around and try to hit the more advanced enemy sub, as this is going to be the more expensive one for them to replace, which we're keeping an eye on. Let's go ahead and follow it and keep trying to go for that one. Its readiness morale is plummeting due to all the ASW that we are carrying out on it. Let's try and sail around it just to kind of try to keep it surrounded at least. It's down to 4. It will be able to get away, and there's a third one here that we just can't keep up with all this. And carriers are not the greatest at going after this. We would need escort carriers. That's another thing. I might actually have escort carriers right now if the Brits didn't have so many land fronts to take care of. Can the Brits actually get escort carriers? Yeah, they can get 3 of them, so I would almost definitely have these, instead of just relying on these destroyers all by themselves. And hopefully I would have had better ASW, because I wouldn't have had to focus other things quite as much, but you know, here we are. There's also Papua New Guinea to look at, and the enemies here did not recover. Maybe because they're out of supply, I don't know, but we're going to go ahead and attack with the Kanga Special Forces, wiping out the Japanese unit here, and effectively reclaiming Papua New Guinea. We'll go ahead and claim that with the Kanga Special Forces as well, which the supply spread should claim this for us. I don't know, I mean, if we look over at China, this one little mountainous corner of Korea has not been ours the whole time. But it doesn't affect us in any way, so I haven't really cared. Just as I don't really care right here. So these forces have now essentially done their job. MacArthur can get out of here if he wants, as can all this other crap. I wouldn't know where to send MacArthur right now. I mean, he could go here, but I'll probably just end up moving these planes more than anything. They don't need to stay there. Same thing, just all these planes that we have in the Pacific, they don't need to stay where they are. And honestly, they can hardly operate out here. I tried to simulate the Allied Air Force, the American Air Force, out here in the Pacific during World War II. That's what I had the idea of when I was sending planes out here. However, the lack of supply produced by these locations makes that very impossible. Unless they had 6 supply, which they don't, they have 5. It's pretty much impossible to use any of this for that purpose without excessive cost, because you'll have to operate out all the time. There's no way to send convoys of shipments and supplies there, so they're always going to be operating at a pretty notable debuff. Oh, how interesting. Since the last episode, the Norwegian path has moved from Bremen and gone over to Kiel here. Or Wilhelm, it's moved from this port to this port. Before it went down here, but since I've loaded back in, it's moved, so we can actually still raid it. Huh, would you look at that? I know I said I wouldn't really use these bombers, and I'm changing my mind. I've just changed the Illustrious to intercept only, so we can go with some of our regular fighters here and start bombing the shit out of Saint Nazaire, which I had the opportunity to cripple earlier. I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't be very handy for them for the purposes of dealing with ships. However, I definitely did not think about the purposes of supply, so I also thought I would get the ship that was going to be exploded. I never got it, so good to know. Let's go ahead and strap bomb that bitch. At the very least, it'll be a handy port for us when we take it. We do have escorts to deal with, fighters running cap. We are bombing it, dealing 2 damage. It's going to lose them some MPPs, but other than that, it's also going to lose them supplies at Nantes, which this is what they're really relying on over here for supplies, so might as well set the strap bomber on it. Have the escorts fly cap. We're not really damaging their fighters or anything, but the strap bombings are getting through, losing them MPPs and lowering supply. Supply's only at 8, so there's a lot more work that can be done there. We can also go ahead up here to Reykjavik and upgrade these maritime bombers with ASW2. Not that it comes very in handy, because I haven't used it on submarines ever, and I probably never will, given the distance here. We don't have enough long-range aircraft upgrades to make that work. We've taken care of all of the essentials as the UK, and then some. We finished a lot of tech, and I would like to keep the UK on top of tech now that they have the ability to do so. Now that it's still so early in the war, we're winning and we can afford to move at our own pace as we are setting the pace. I think I will naturally go for more industrial technology to allow them to make more MPPs in the long run. 366 remaining. We can go ahead to maximize spying and intelligence as well. 216 remaining. And 300 worth that we can still fit into research. All that remains is advanced subs, heavy bombers, ASW, and AA. All of which are very, very important. However, I could take this opportunity to allocate all of our diplomacy chips, which, as we know, right now, don't really matter. We've basically already won. It's just going to take time, and diplomacy is not going to necessarily make that any easier. However, I will still go ahead with the thing I was going to do and just start pouring these MPPs, all of them, into Sweden. So now they have 5. The USSR has 3, and so there's a 40% chance per turn to move towards us. If, for whatever reason, we need help lowering their morale or supplies, getting Sweden in could help with this. At the very least, it would end up earning the UK more money, because Sweden would join and then provide its MPPs to the UK, in case we need it in the long run to build up a navy or whatever the hell is going to be needed to take on Japan. Things that provide the UK with money are definitely good things. I know we still have all these Finnish troops. I have not forgotten about them. I just prioritized other things with my MPPs. Otherwise, we would be marching through Norway right now. For now, we are not. I can, however, go and give this first garrison the first level of infantry weapons, just in case any Germans start moving up through Norway, which is occupied. So if we liberated this with the Finns, not the Soviets, thankfully, because they won't be coming through here, the Finns could liberate Norway, which would probably go to the UK as well, and then all the Nordic countries would be with the UK, providing their MPPs, among other things, and that would certainly be really handy. Now, I have thought over how to use the 666 Soviet MPPs that we have. They have a lot of leeway to do whatever the fuck they want, thanks to all the American money pouring in, and thanks to their great condition at the start, thanks to the efforts of the UK, and the money the UK poured into them. Great opportunities. So I've been thinking about how to use these points. I have 2 ideas. One will be helpful for dealing with Germany, however, it's going to take a while to make, and that is going to be getting our 1 railgun we can make. It's strategic artillery, so it's not quite as good at de-entrenching enemies, but it can move around really quickly. We could get it into position really quickly, but it would take longer to make than other kinds of artillery. But we can only get 1, so I'm thinking of just going for this one. I'll pour in the AA defenses that it can get, and we'll go ahead and purchase that. 476 remaining. Now, the next thing I'm going to do might raise some eyebrows. I'll just tell you right now, the only reason I'm about to do what I'm going to do is because I believe that Japan will be the holdout at this rate. Germany already has Berlin surrounded. The unnecessary American invasion is going to be coming to Italy at this rate. And so that's great. The UK is pressing on Italy and Germany from both sides. Everything is going well in Europe at an unstoppable rate. However, Japan is still a situation of attrition and etc. So, it's going to sound like the craziest fucking thing in the world, but I'm going to purchase the one and only Soviet aircraft carrier and give it the 1 upgrade it can get. Is it going to be effective? Probably not. But is it going to be another carrier platform in the Pacific? Because I could probably deploy it at Vladivostok that I can send to assist the Chinese with the American carriers and Navy to try to speed that shit up over there. Well, yes, if the war goes on long enough to actually justify using this, because of course it's going to take a year and a half just to make this. This would have to keep going until the summer of 1944 to be useful. But the thing is, nothing else I could make except more artillery would even be handy in Europe. Europe is probably not going to last another year and a half. If anyone could, it would be Japan. What could I do to help with that? Make a fucking carrier. Carrier or destroyer, something like that. Not land units. We won't need land units as the Soviets. We'll be swimming in land units once Europe is done. What could help, if it does stretch that long, is a carrier. So we are going to purchase the Lenin aircraft carrier. That leaves us with 143 MPPs remaining. Holy crap, look at all these garrisons we can buy. That does allow me to see that we can go ahead and upgrade our garrisons. Not that we need to. It's just a fun little way to go waste my points, I guess. I'm sure there's more. Yeah, there's another one. Let's give that an upgrade. Cool. There's another one. Rostov. Let's go give that an upgrade. Cool. We still have 103 MPPs. Well, let's upgrade the ship. Anti-air defense, because these ships could also go to the Pacific later if needed. I'll upgrade the other ones later, I just didn't want to do that right now. So I didn't, I just moved them. I have 81 MPPs remaining with the Soviets. Rather than spend that on a garrison I don't need, I will just save that for their next round. However, we are out of time for this episode with still the Americans and the Chinese to handle in the Pacific. For now though, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.